it is an inborn concept, right? It is born between me and towards my living, my lifestyle, I represent John Public. Whenever time the public is peace, I'm pleased.
You ever hear a voice so smooth it could talk a baby out of a tantrum? That was Gregory Isaacs, reggae's cool ruler. His sound was pure magic, and his style, always on point. But behind the music was a battle that took a heavy toll. Addiction followed him through the peak of his fame and dragged down everything from sold-out shows to studio sessions. Missed gigs, arrests, and public meltdowns turned headlines into heartbreak. In this video, we're looking at how addiction broke one of reggae's brightest stars and what it means for the legacy he left behind. Little Gregory and the start of his career. If heartbreak had a voice in the 1970s, it probably sounded suspiciously like Gregory Isaacs. This wasn't just a man singing songs. This was a velvet-voiced operator turning emotional wreckage into slow, sweet reggae gold. Known as the Cool Ruler, Isaacs delivered love songs that somehow made pain sound seductive. He could sing about being broke, heartbroken, or just straight up done with life, and still have you swaying your hips. It wasn't just talent, it was a full-on vibe. And for many, Isaacs was reggae's ultimate smooth talker, with a little danger behind the charm. Born in Kingston, Jamaica in 1951, Gregory Anthony Isaacs didn't slide into the music industry with ease. Like most legends, he started rough. As a teenager, he was already hustling his way through local talent contests, trying to prove that he had the goods. In 1968, he made his recording debut with a single called Another Heartache, released under the name Winston Sinclair. The title should have been a red flag, because the song tanked. It barely made a ripple. Most people would have taken the L and called it a rap, but Isaacs wasn't built like that. Instead, he made his next move smart. He partnered up with Errol Dunkley and launched his own record label and shop, African Museum. Now, that's how you flip a flop into a business plan. Soon after, the label landed its first real hit with My Only Lover, which just so happened to go down in history as the first Lovers rock track ever recorded. Gregory Isaacs didn't just find his lane, he helped build the road. Of course, running a label takes money, and Isaacs wasn't exactly rolling in it. So, to fund his passion project, he started recording for other producers on the side. It didn't take long for those extra sessions to stack up into something major. Tracks like All I Have Is Love, Lonely Soldier, Black a Kill Black, and Extra Classic got people listening. Then came his cover of Loving Pauper, originally a hit by Dobby Dobson. Isaacs gave it that signature emotional grit, smooth, a little worn, and full of longing. And suddenly, everyone knew who he was. In 1974, things kicked into high gear when he linked up with producer Alvin Ranglin. That partnership gave Isaacs his first #1 single in Jamaica with Love Is Overdue. For someone who had started out with a song nobody wanted to hear, that kind of success had to feel like sweet revenge. And it wouldn't be his last hit, not by a long shot. Through the rest of the 1970s, Gregory Isaacs became one of the most recorded reggae artists on the island. He worked with almost every major producer in Jamaica. We're talking legendary names, people who helped shape the sound of reggae itself. Each brought their own flavor to the table, but Isaacs kept his cool, slipping in and out of styles while never losing that sly, love-weary voice. His music could be political, personal, or just plain sensual, and it always hit the mark. By the end of the decade, Isaacs wasn't just big in Jamaica, he was global. He toured the UK and the US regularly, earning a fan base that stretched far beyond the Caribbean. Fans and critics started putting him in the same category as reggae heavyweights like Dennis Brown and Bob Marley. Marley was the prophet, Brown was the sweetheart, and Isaacs, he was the rogue, the guy with the kind of voice that made you want to take a risk you knew better than to take. He reunited with Ranglin in 1907 and 1978, releasing more hits like Border and #1 under the GG's label. The man was on a roll. At this point, Isaacs wasn't just making music. He was making sure nobody could touch his seat at the Lovers Rock table. But he didn't stop there. Isaacs also expanded his business hustle. He opened a record store, Cash and Carry, right on Orange Street, a spot already known as a reggae hotspot in Kingston. Later, he moved the shop next door to Prince Buster's iconic Record Shack. Not a coincidence. Isaacs knew what he was doing. He was planting himself among the greats. He also ran the Cash and Carry label with Trevor Lego Douglas, keeping full control over his brand and sound. This wasn't just about fame anymore. Isaacs was building a legacy. Looking back, it's easy to see why Gregory Isaacs is still a name people say with a little reverence. He started with nothing but a dream and a few missed notes, and he built an entire genre of reggae that didn't just speak to love, it whispered, pleaded, and sometimes begged. Isaacs was that rare kind of artist who could make you cry, groove, and fall in love all in the same song. He didn't just sing the blues, he made them beautiful. And he did it all while keeping his hat tilted, his voice smooth, and his cool fully intact. Going international. By the late 1970s, Gregory Isaacs looked like he was about to go full superstar. He had the voice, the swagger, and a name that already held serious weight in reggae circles. When he signed with Frontline Records in 1978, a Virgin Records offshoot, it looked like everything was lining up. Big label, check. Movie role, check. He even popped up in the reggae cult classic Rockers, performing his track Slave Master like he was born for the camera. If there was ever a moment when the world seemed ready for the full Cool Ruler experience, this was it. But then, the needle skipped. His albums The Cool Ruler and Soon Forward, both dropped during this critical period, didn't exactly fly off the shelves. It was the kind of industry letdown that could have knocked a lesser artist straight out of the ring. Critics would later agree these records were some of his best work. Raw, intimate, full of that melancholy charm that made Isaacs different from everybody else. But in real time, they didn't make the splash his team hoped for. Just goes to show, great art doesn't always come with great timing. Still, Isaacs wasn't about to fade quietly. In 1981, he made his first appearance at Reggae Sunsplash, a major Jamaican music festival, and from that point on, he became a yearly staple. Think of it like Coachella for reggae, but with more heart and a lot less Instagram. While the albums weren't moving fast, the live shows were heating up. Isaacs knew how to work a crowd, that low, pleading tone in his voice. It landed different when you heard it live. Fans didn't just show up, they swayed, wept, and sang along like he was telling their own stories. After his run with Frontline, Isaacs moved on to the Charisma Records sub-label Pre, which turned out to be a solid pivot. It was here that he released The Lonely Lover and More Gregory, both titles that feel like they were pulled straight out of his diary. These weren't flashy pop grabs. They were tender, moody, and undeniably Isaacs. Around the same time, his singles started picking up steam again. Songs like Tune In, Permanent Lover, Wailing Rudy, and Tribute to Waddy got airplay, respect, and even more love from his growing fan base. His sound wasn't changing for the charts. It was sticking to the heartbreak and coolness he wore like a second skin. Then came the move to Island Records. And with it, the record that would officially bring Gregory Isaacs to a wider audience, Night Nurse. Released in 1982, this album was smooth like satin and just as dangerous. The title track in particular, a stone-cold classic. It wasn't a chart topper in the UK or the US, but you wouldn't have known that by how often it played in clubs or how many people wore out their vinyl copy. Radio stations gave it plenty of love, and the album itself managed to climb up to number 32 on the UK charts. Not bad for a guy who'd been bouncing between labels, carving out his lane the hard way. Now, here's where things get extra poetic. Night Nurse eventually found a second life in one of the most unexpected places, television ads for an over-the-counter cold and flu medicine. Yep, Gregory Isaacs became the unofficial soundtrack for people coughing in bathrobes. But even with that strange twist, the song never lost its mystique. It was still late-night, slow dance magic. Behind the scenes, things weren't all smooth vocals and tour lights. Isaacs was dealing with personal battles, especially with addiction. His wife, June Isaacs, stood by him during those tough years. She once shared that the strength of their love helped keep them going, even when things got hard. She wasn't just his partner, she was, in her words, his night nurse. She toured with him, watched over him, and tried to be his steady ground when the chaos took over. The metaphor wasn't just lyrical, it was real. As his fame grew, so did the pressure, and while Night Nurse became his signature song, it also reflected the tension in his life. Isaacs knew how to make pain beautiful, but he was also living that pain off stage, and somehow, that honesty made his music hit harder. You didn't just hear his songs, you felt them. They were scratched up with real-life scars. So, while Gregory Isaacs didn't quite become the pop chart icon some predicted, he became something much deeper. He was the artist people turned to when they couldn't sleep, when they missed someone they shouldn't miss, or when they needed to cry with some rhythm behind it. And Night Nurse wasn't just a song, it was a whole atmosphere. Slow, sultry, a little haunted, and unforgettable. Gregory Isaacs didn't just flirt with stardom, he made it chase him at his own pace. And even when the numbers didn't always reflect it, his music lived on, and still does, with the kind of soul that can't be manufactured. He wasn't loud about it, but he didn't have to be. The cool ruler didn't beg for attention. He whispered, and the whole room leaned in. Night Nurse's muse and addiction. Gregory Isaacs didn't just sing reggae, he was reggae. That smooth, aching voice. It was made for midnight heartbreak, whispered promises, and second chances. But behind the velvet sound was a man waging war with demons that didn't back down, not even for stardom. His life was full of hits, headlines, heartbreak, and high notes, but it was also full of shadows. And yet, even in his darkest hours, Isaacs kept making music that could break your heart and heal it in the same breath. By the early 1980s, Isaacs had made his mark on the reggae scene. He was riding high off the release of his new iconic album Night Nurse, had signed with Island Records, and was on the cusp of true international fame. But while his music was charting, his personal life was unraveling. In 1982, he was sentenced to 6 months in a Kingston prison for having unlicensed guns. Isaacs claimed they were for protection, but this wasn't his first run-in with the law. It was his 27th arrest. That's not a typo. 27. And this time, the world learned just how deep his troubles ran. Isaacs was tangled up in drug trafficking and fully addicted to crack cocaine. Still, in true Gregory fashion, he didn't hide from the fallout. He marked his release from prison by dropping Out Day, his second album with Island, as if to say, "Yeah, I messed up, but I'm still here." Jamaican dancehall artist Yellowman even released a track called Gregory Free in celebration, a shout-out featured on his Young, Gifted and Yellow album. Around the same time, Isaacs was featured in the reggae documentary Land of Look Behind, putting his legacy on tape while still walking the tightrope of addiction and artistry. When his contract with Island ended, Isaacs didn't slow down, he shifted gears. In 1984, he dropped the single Cool Ruler Come Again, a defiant little wink to anyone who thought he was finished. He jumped into a wild stretch of recording, partnering with a rotating cast of top Jamaican producers like Prince Jammy, Bobby Digital, Steely and Clevie, Hugh Redmond James, and Tad Dawkins. Most artists would burn out under that kind of output, but Isaacs kept his sound sharp and his heart in every track. The most important partnership of this period came with Gussie Clarke of the Music Works label. Together they created Private Beach Party in 1985, one of Isaacs's most beloved albums of the decade. It wasn't just a rebound, it was a reset. 3 years later, they struck gold again with Rumors, a radio and street smash that reminded everyone why Isaacs mattered. More hits followed: Mind You Dis, Rough Neck, Too Good to Be True, and Report to Me. Clarke kept bringing collaborators into the mix, from lovers rock legend Freddie McGregor to dancehall stars like Ninja Man and JC Lodge, proving that Isaacs could hold his own with anybody. In '93, he teamed up with Barris Hammond for the duet One Good Turn, produced by Philip Faddis Burrell. Burrell also helmed Isaacs' '94 album Midnight Confidential, which added yet another solid record to his ever-growing catalog. Throughout the '90s, Isaacs kept things moving through his African Museum label, which continued to release his own work and showcase other talent. In '97, British band Simply Red covered Night Nurse, and Isaacs couldn't have been prouder. It became a UK Top 20 hit, and his wife June said he was honored by it. Then, in the 2000s, the song got a dancehall remix from Lady Saw, who added her fiery vocals to the original in a way only she could. But as his music career kept going, Isaacs' health didn't. Crack cocaine had taken a vicious toll. His once soaring voice became rough and weathered. He lost most of his teeth. He said in 2007 that drugs were the greatest college ever, but with a tuition fee so high it was almost fatal. He didn't glamorize it, he called it what it was, a weapon. But he also said he had learned from it and left it behind. In 2007, Isaacs performed at the ICC Cricket World Cup inauguration in Jamaica, and later that year teamed up with Spanish rap group Folklóricos. It was a reminder that reggae had no borders, and neither did his influence. Then came 2008, With his teeth repaired and sobriety in place, Isaacs released Brand New Me, a title that said it all. Critics praised it, fans loved it, and the Grammys noticed. It earned him a nomination for Best Reggae Album. It was his triumphant return. The Cool Ruler was back. A year later, he followed it up with My Kind of Lady. And in 2010, he released Isaacs Meets Isaac with Zimbabwean singer King Isaac. That album earned him a 4th Grammy nomination and introduced him to a new generation. Despite rumors, Isaacs clarified that Night Nurse wasn't about drugs. It was about the quiet strength of a woman, a partner who's there in the dead of night when you're hurting. The first person you reach for, he explained, isn't the doctor with the degree. It's the woman beside you who gets up, makes the tea, and comforts you through the pain. That woman was June Isaacs. She wasn't just his wife. She was the one who stuck around when the addiction raged. She even got arrested multiple times just for having drugs on her, so Isaacs could travel freely. He was the breadwinner, she said. The drug was overpowering. He had no control. Still, she never stopped loving him. Final days. He told her he'd be fine. Just a quick surgery in London, nothing major. He'd be back soon. There was love in his voice, but it trembled in a way that clung to the edges of silence. What June Isaacs didn't know, what he never told her, was that her husband, reggae legend Gregory Isaacs, was dying. The Cool Ruler was walking his final steps, not on a stage, but quietly, away from the spotlight, carrying a secret that would break her heart only after it was too late. In an industry where drama often screams louder than the music, Gregory Isaacs' last act was astonishingly quiet. Lung cancer had made its home inside him, slowly stealing breath from the man whose voice could stop time. And yet, he never spoke of it. He never wanted sympathy. He never asked for tears. He left with the same understated grace he brought to every track he ever recorded. And when he finally went still on October 25th, 2010, in his London home at just 59 years old, he left behind more than just records and memories. He left a world still trying to catch its breath. Gregory Isaacs' career was a complicated dance between beauty and struggle. His music was velvet and ache, honey laced with heartbreak. While many remember him for the smooth, intoxicating sound of Night Nurse, it was just one chapter in a story filled with creative brilliance, personal demons, and undying resilience. He wasn't just singing songs, he was translating pain into poetry, seduction into symphonies. But behind those lyrics was a man who lived with both fame and fracture. Even as his star rose in the late 70s and early 80s, so did the weight of addiction, arrests, and health issues. He was talented, yes, but also tormented. Still, through all of it, June Isaacs stood by him. She was more than his wife. She was his grounding force, his partner, his confidant, and in the end, his final audience. Their last conversation didn't echo with fear. It hummed with love, the kind that has seen the worst and stayed anyway. He promised he'd be okay. He said the surgery wasn't necessary anymore. But the truth was, nothing could be done. The cancer had advanced too far, and Gregory had made peace with it, alone. It was the kind of quiet strength that defined him. A man who had poured so much of himself into his music didn't need to make a grand exit. He had already said everything he needed to, between the notes, in the shadows of his choruses. After his passing, the reggae world didn't just mourn a man, it mourned a sound, a feeling. On November 20th, 2010, Kingston's National Indoor Sports Centre became the epicenter of that grief and celebration. Legends gathered, not just to speak his name, but to sing it. Lloyd Parks, We the People Band, Ken Booth, Freddie McGregor, Shaggy, Judy Mowat, Mavado, the Tamlins, and Bongo Herman each took the stage not just to perform, but to honor a brother. The room was heavy with reverence, but the air was alive with music, because that's how you say goodbye to a voice like his. Eventually, his remains were laid to rest at Dovecot Memorial Park and Crematorium. But how do you bury a man who lives in speakers around the world, in playlists passed down like heirlooms, in late-night slow dances and long road trips where Night Nurse still stirs something in the soul? Gregory Isaacs may have left the stage, but he's still playing encores in hearts and headphones across the globe. What made Gregory Isaacs different wasn't just his voice, it was the honesty behind it. You could hear every late night, every lost love, every hard-earned survival etched into every note. He didn't perform like someone who wanted fame. He sang like someone who needed to be heard, like his songs were the only places where his truth could breathe. June Isaacs later shared how she noticed things changing. His insomnia had worsened. He was more tired than usual, but he never said why. He never complained. That was Gregory. Even when his body began to give out, he never let the illness define him. And maybe that's the legacy we don't talk about enough. Not just the gold records or the timeless tracks, but the man who decided his final act would be one of love, not fear. Who protected his wife from the unbearable truth, not because he didn't trust her, but because he couldn't bear to see her suffer before she had to. There's a strange beauty in that kind of heartbreak. In the way he left this world, the same way he lived in it, on his own terms. Smooth, soulful, and always just a little bit out of reach. Today, when that familiar croon floats through the speakers, it still sounds like something intimate, like a whisper from another world. And maybe that's the point. Gregory Isaacs didn't need the world to know he was suffering. He just needed us to remember how he made us feel. So the next time you hear Night Nurse or Love is Overdue, don't just nod along. Listen, really listen, because that voice, it didn't die in London. It's still out there, floating on warm winds and echoing through the quiet spaces between songs. Just like Gregory himself, it never begged for attention. It just played, and we listened. His music's legacy. No one wore heartbreak like Gregory Isaacs. He crooned through speakers like he was whispering secrets into your soul, and even now, his legacy refuses to fade quietly into the night. But Isaacs wasn't just the cool ruler of reggae. He was a man with a mission, and even in death, that mission lives on through the rhythm of remembrance, philanthropy, and honor. What started as one man's personal crusade to connect and uplift has blossomed into something bigger, a legacy lovingly preserved by the people who knew him best and the communities he touched most. On July 15, 2011, on what would have been Isaacs' 61st birthday, his wife, June Wyndham, launched the Gregory Isaacs Foundation. Her goal was simple but powerful, to keep the charitable spirit of Isaacs alive. This wasn't a vanity project or some token tribute. It was an extension of the heart that had once sung of lovers lost and dreams deferred. Gregory Isaacs gave us his soul in every verse, and now, through the foundation, his soul gives back. A year after its inception, the foundation threw a celebration that echoed with the voices of reggae royalty. You, Roy, Big Youth, the Mighty Diamonds, all came together for a free concert that was more than just a tribute. It was a call to action. The event raised funds for 2 schools, proving that Isaacs' music wasn't the only thing that had staying power. His compassion did too. For those who had danced to his records or cried to his lyrics, this wasn't just charity, it was community, a chance to turn mourning into movement and turn good vibes into good works. And just when you thought the story couldn't get more poetic, in July 2015, a mural was unveiled at 125 Orange Street in Kingston, Jamaica. For the uninitiated, that address isn't just some random spot. It's the site of Isaacs' former cash and carry shop, a place where music and culture once pulsed through the walls. Now, home to the Lego recording studios, the building stands proudly adorned with a portrait by artist Junior Moore. It's more than art, it's a symbol, a visual love letter to a man whose influence still colors the streets of Kingston. And because Gregory Isaacs never did anything halfway, the mural's unveiling also came with the launch of a product that sounds like something he himself would have coolly sipped. Cool Ruler Spring Water. Subtle, smooth, and unmistakably Isaacs. In 2016, the Jamaican government decided it was time to make things official. They posthumously awarded Isaacs the Order of Distinction, Officer Class, an honor that cemented what fans already knew. His contributions to Jamaican music were historic. The award didn't change his status, it confirmed it. Gregory Isaacs was, and remains, a cornerstone of reggae, a voice that captured the highs and lows of life in a way few others could. But his recognition didn't stop at the Caribbean shoreline. That same year, across the Atlantic in the quiet suburb of Harrow, England, the UK branch of the Gregory Isaacs Foundation installed a commemorative blue plaque at 59 Weald Lane. It wasn't just a nod to his final years, it was a reminder that Gregory Isaacs' reach had no borders. The house, once shared with his British wife Linda Diane Isaacs, had become more than a residence. It was a part of his story, and now, officially, a piece of musical history. Linda passed in 23, but her family still lives there, carrying on not just a personal memory, but a public legacy. And the foundation kept the momentum going. In February 2018, yet another blue plaque was unveiled, this time at Isaacs's former home at 15 Sunrise Crescent in St. Andrew, Jamaica. The foundation used the event to announce plans for a Gregory Isaacs museum, a physical space to honor the emotional space he created in our lives through music. Imagine it, walls lined with vintage vinyl, stories woven through rooms like melodies, and a vibe that feels like stepping inside one of his songs. Gregory Isaacs didn't just leave behind an impressive discography, he left behind a movement. Through murals, music, memorials, and now museums, his name continues to echo in places where his voice once played. And while his body may be at rest, his legacy is in motion, kept alive by the people who refuse to let his message fade. The cool ruler may be gone, but the empire he built, of compassion, creativity, and connection, is still standing and still growing. Because legends don't just die, they evolve, they teach, they give. And if you listen closely, they still sing. His voice could soothe a storm, but inside, Gregory Isaacs was weathering one of his own. Addiction didn't just steal moments, it stole momentum, haunting his rise and shadowing his legacy. Yet through it all, the cool ruler kept singing, kept surviving, and kept pouring his soul into every note. His struggles were real, his music even more so. If you felt something watching this, hit that like button and share the story of a man whose pain became poetry. Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories behind the legends. We've got a lot more coming your way.